My name is Toscano. I'm a certified nutrition educator and author of the book, Sweet Fire, Sugar, Diabetes, and Your Health. I've been teaching about sugar for over 16 years with this relentless drive and passion. And for most of those years, I had no idea why I was so obsessed with this topic. It wasn't until years after I'd already produced a DVD on sugar and I was halfway through writing the book that I discovered the big shock. My assistant Janelle had come over that day and we were working on the book together. And I asked Janelle if she would do me a big favor and let me test her blood sugar after we both ate the same thing. I wanted to know what her blood sugar did, a healthy 25-year-old, no diabetes in her family. I was 50 at the time and diabetes was rampant in my family. Janelle said yes, yay Janelle. So I went to the drugstore, got the testing supplies, came back and made us both a black bean burrito with avocado and cheese. I wanted to test before we ate, then 1 hour later, then 2 hours later. I knew what was supposed to happen. After the first hour, the blood sugar spike shouldn't spike higher than 130. By the second hour, it should come right back down to normal. So we ate the burrito and tested. After the first hour, we both spiked. Janelle spiked at 117. Perfect. Came right back down. I spiked at 180. And I didn't come down for 5 hours. I looked at that meter like it was a bad dream. And if Janelle didn't test with me, there's no way I would have believed that. I would have just assumed the meter was wrong. How could this possibly happen? I'm thin, I exercise 2 hours a day, I eat really healthy, and my fasting blood sugar is normal. Well, it turns out I missed something really obvious, and the other thing I just flat out didn't know. So let's take a look at the first piece of the puzzle. What was the obvious thing that I missed? So first we need to get very clear on what exactly is sugar. And in order to understand this, we need to take a closer look at carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are broken up into two groups, simple and complex. Now here is the big aha. It doesn't matter whether the carbohydrate is simple or complex. All carbohydrates, simple or complex, are just chains of sugar units. The simple are the short chains, 1 or 2 units long, and the complex are the longer chains, 3 or more units long. But they're all just chains of sugar. An example of a single unit of sugar is glucose and fructose. And if you put those two together, you get sucrose, which is table sugar. An example of a complex carbohydrate is starch. And all starch is a chain of glucose molecules that can be many thousands of units long. So all carbohydrates are just chains of sugar. It's just the shorter the chain, the sweeter the taste. And that's why foods that contain a lot of these simple carbohydrates taste sweet, like honey and syrup. And foods that contain a lot of complex carbohydrates don't taste sweet, like vegetables and legumes. So all carbohydrates are chains of sugar, and ultimately, it doesn't matter if it's short, long, simple, complex. Ultimately, when it gets digested and processed by the body, it enters the bloodstream as the simple sugar glucose. Glucose is good. Glucose is our body's blood sugar. We need glucose to live. It fuels us. So all carbohydrates will turn into blood sugar. The only one that doesn't is fiber. Now, most people don't know this, but fiber is technically a carbohydrate. It's a chain of sugar molecules, but our bodies can't break it down. So it's the only carbohydrate that doesn't put sugar in the blood. So other than fiber, if it's a carbohydrate, it's turning to blood sugar. There is no such thing as a good carbohydrate that doesn't turn into blood sugar. They all do. The simple ones are going to come in the fastest since they're already broken down. The complex are going to take a little longer since they need to be broken down, but they're also going to be putting sugar in the blood, especially starch. Remember, starch is thousands of units of sugar, and once those chains are broken, that's a whole pile of sugar being dumped in the blood. So blood sugar is going to be coming from both the simple and the complex carbs. Now the problem is, when you look at a nutrition label and you see sugars, it's only referring to the simple carbs. It's not including the complex carbs, which are turning to sugar as soon as you digest them. So that sugars number, it's only half the story. The real sugars number is the total carbs number. It includes the simple, the complex, and the fiber. So every single gram in that total, except for the fiber, is going to turn to blood sugar. This is the real sugars number. So when you want to know how much sugar is in a food, you look at the total carbs number. Now the problem is, carbs doesn't sound like sugar, so it's really easy to pretend it's not there and ignore it. I certainly did. So I set out on a mission. How do I get that word carbs to sound like sugar so that when people look at a label, instead of seeing total carbs, they see total sugars? So I set out to find the perfect acronym for C.A.R.B.S. And I got 5 of the best minds that I know. And for 3 days, we texted each other every hour, back and forth. You know, what about this? What about this? And we were getting things like contribution affecting rising blood sugar. And I'm like, no! A cab driver needs to understand it without hearing my whole talk. It's got to be so simple. 1, maybe 2 syllables. This went on for 3 days. On the 3rd day, I was walking from the bank to my car, and I got hit by grace. You know it's grace because it doesn't come as like a bam, eureka, yeah, that's it, woohoo! It comes as a, oh my God, you're kidding me. How obvious, how did I miss this? Are you ready? I have been waiting all summer to tell you this. Okay, C.A.R.B.S. Carbs are really blood sugar. It gives me goosebumps every time. I can no longer look at a label without seeing this. I can no longer pretend it's the sugars number. So let's take a look at how that burrito could spike my sugar. First, the tortilla. Looking at the label, we see the sugars number is 0. In the past, like a minute ago, that would have fooled us. But we know the real sugars number is the total carbs number because carbs are really blood sugar. So we take that total, we subtract out the fiber that doesn't turn to sugar. That means we have 31 grams of carbs coming from the tortilla hitting the blood as sugar. Now the beans. Again, looking at the label, sugars number says 0. We know the truth. The real sugars number is the total carbs number because carbs are really blood sugar. We take that total carbs. Now beans actually have a lot of fiber, so we're going to subtract out the fiber. 13 more carbs hitting the blood as sugar from the beans. So altogether, we have 44 grams of carbohydrates hitting the blood as sugar. The problem is grams are hard to visualize. So I like to convert it to teaspoons. And I know that there are 4 grams of sugar per teaspoon, so I just take that number, 44 divided by 4 to get the teaspoon. So every time I ate that burrito, I was dumping 11 teaspoons of sugar in my blood, and I completely missed it. You know, sugar was the last thing on my mind because it didn't taste sweet. And that's the first piece of the puzzle. The obvious thing that I missed was that carbs is the real sugar's number. And I was dumping a whole lot more sugar in my blood than I realized. I can no longer look at a label without zooming in on the total carbs number and reciting carbs are really blood sugar. I can no longer pretend it's the sugar's number. The acronym is just too good. It's so good we even turned it into a t-shirt. And I showed this t-shirt last week to a surgeon. And she stared at it. And then she looked at me and she said, if you turn this into a button, I will wear it on my white coat. And then I will bird dog the other surgeons to wear it to do the same. I had to actually go home and look up bird dog. I didn't know what that meant. It means convince. So knowledge is power, and I believe there's power in learning simple things really, really well. So what I did in Sweet Fire is took each piece of the blood sugar puzzle and explained each piece very, very simply, and then put them together in a way that's so easy to read. You can read the whole thing in a couple days. Because once you have a solid foundation, you can figure out anything going on with your blood sugar. It's just like this big, easy puzzle. So we're going to be in the exhibition hall. And if you really want to thrill me, when you see me, look at me and say, carbs are really blood sugar. Thank you.